Hi, I'm Sonya, one of the three EOs of Sharesies. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of land, water and sky, of which our Australian offices are located, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And also, a quick disclaimer, investing involves risk. You aren't guaranteed to make money and you might lose the money you start with. We don't provide personal advice or product recommendations, although we will talk about a specific product in this episode. And if we do, it's just an example. Any information we provide is just general and current at the time we provide it. And if you do need help with your investment choices, we recommend talking to a licensed financial advisor. Today, we're joined by Richard Clark, who is one of the co-founders of Sharesies, and Luke Pettit, who is the founder and CEO of toTelescope. We are talking about AI, which is a hot topic right now, and something that's really of interest to us as we are launching a new tool here at Sharesies called AI Search. And so we want to talk about that, but also just get a chance to talk about AI with two people who are deep in that world. So let's kick off the conversation. So first, maybe we'll start with you, Richard. Can you tell us a bit about you and how you come to be joining this convo today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of the technical co-founders of Sharesies, and came to Sharesies after a long time in the tech industry. And I think the fascinating thing for me about AI is it has always been really interesting. The idea of computers doing everything, being just like people in some ways. It's science fiction everywhere, and so that was always a thing that was fascinating to me. I tried to, make things ever since I started programming, make little companions or whatever, and they were all not very good. But, in the last few years, we've just seen this incredible sea change, and it has been so interesting to see something that's gone from like nothing to science fiction to really right there on your computer, able to play with it. And, my recent history with that has just been really engaging with these new changes, building tools, chatting with people like Luke here, and really trying to understand how this is going to impact everything, and how we can use these things to do really interesting stuff.
And how about you, Luke?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm the CEO and founder of toTelescope, so I'm definitely trying to keep up with AI. It's wild, as Richard pointed out. Like it's just moving so quick. It is, even for someone well and truly involved in the industry, and as an engineer, I feel like I understand the fundamentals, but it is crazy how quick things are moving. And it certainly appeals. The idea that you can just have a system make intelligent choices with unusual conditions. It's so human. It feels so human the way it works, and it actually has shifted my thinking around how we see humans. I kind of feel like I'm some sort of finely tuned model that's had all these experiences through my life.
As well, you mentioned, you're from toTelescope. For anyone who's never heard of toTelescope, do you want to just give us the one-liner of what toTelescope is?
Yeah, so we're a generative AI company based in Australia. We're a small team, but we're growing. We're working with brokers and publishers and sort of fintechs all across the world on solving problems to do with capital markets and finance. And most of those problems we've found are to do with, I guess, the overwhelming nature of capital markets, of investing, of the choices we have when it comes to investing, and just offering co-pilots or AI tools to help navigate that journey when it comes to making a decision or thinking about, a single stock, or looking for something maybe that matters to you, and just providing more information to those investors.
Yeah. So now if we want to take a step back, and we're just talking about things that, for anyone who's not finger on the pulse, or they're just kind of reading the headlines, hearing what's going on, if we can help fill in a few of those gaps. Can you just tell us maybe what's been happening that's driving this real kick kind of into another gear?
From where we've been sitting at Sharesies and, my own personal interest, I think probably 3 to 4 years ago, largely with a technology called GPT-2, which was, you're probably aware of GPT-4. You might have heard that stuff on the headlines, Chat GPT and stuff like that. But GPT-2 is an earlier version of this. And when it turned up, it was very interesting. It was nothing like what we're able to see today, but it had those hints. And now with GPT-4 and some of the more recent things, both from Google and Anthropic and other companies involved in this space, is actually it's doing really interesting stuff constantly, consistently, bringing new and interesting perspectives or creating new opportunities. And I think this is the point where it's like you really have to be paying attention to this thing as an organization, because the potential is enormous, and we just don't know what we can and can't do with it. We're still very much finding out.
I'd love to explain how it works as well.
Oh, give that a go. Don't hold back.
Well, I was thinking about it this morning, and it's very hard to articulate sometimes these complex systems in simple ways. But, just think about a simple sentence like, this morning I grabbed my surfboard and I caught an epic. I'm going to say, most likely going to say wave. And we experience this kind of auto-predict on our phones. And so if you think about a sentence and a conversation, it follows a certain number of patterns, and there's probability and mathematics involved in what's most likely to be that final word. But maybe it was actually, I caught an epic fish. And so what's the probability of me saying that? And it's probably very low. But then what OpenAI did in the beginning was they actually just went, let's take auto-predict and let's put it through a large cluster of computing units, of GPUs, and let's look at all of those relationships on a time series, and almost think of it like in 3D space. So like visualize the 3D space of language. And so you think about these kind of relationships between words, but then you start to think of those in a multi-dimensional manner. So you start to think about relationships between paragraphs and the question that's been asked. And that's really all that did. And it's kind of fascinating that maybe this is all intelligence really is. I don't know, Richard, how you'd simplify a large language model?
I think that the crucial insight that I think has been fascinating and changed the way that we did all of this stuff was the insight that being able to predict what happens next is fundamentally the better you are at that, the more you have to understand. And the more you understand, that's what we're driving for with these things. So if you think about, a game of rugby or something like that, you're looking at the players on the field, how they've got the ball, who's running where, what they're doing, what the state of the play is, what the scores are, and everything like that. And if you want to understand and predict what is the player who's currently got the ball going to do next, there's a lot of options. Maybe they'll keep running, maybe they'll kick it, maybe they'll drop it, trip over something, maybe they're about to get tackled. But all of that stuff is easy material for us to look at and say, okay, well, if you're able to reason about the world, if you're able to think really, air quotes on think. If you're able to think about the world, then what you should be able to do is do a good job of predicting what is going to happen next. And that's what they did with these large language models, is they said, okay, well, if we take that down to its very essence, then each time we give you a sentence or something like that, or part of a sentence, you should be able to predict what the next word is going to be, for that sentence.
Yeah, I've used it to try and, create meal plans for my, 1.5-year-old, when I was like, and just like stuff that I'm like, please help me, I don't.
Richard's trying to predict the rugby and you're trying to feed your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then when you think of, what mission we're on here, which is like, we're trying to create more empowerment for people when it comes to money, and some of the things that you guys have talked about what is possible here with AI, or where we're at with AI. Like, I'm really interested to, get your thoughts on how do you see this kind of playing out for people when it comes to money or investing?
The irony is, if this video ends up on YouTube, it's probably going to be part of the future model training that's going to help build the model. So maybe we have our moment to share our ideas. Personally, I think if you think about the best investors of all time, like Munger and Buffett and Howard Marks and all the long list of value investors, the ones that actually like study financial markets and history and a multifaceted approach to investing, they've spent the good part of like 30, 40, in Munger's case, maybe 70 years of their life. I think Munger famously read for 38 hours a week. He would allocate 2 hours a week to meetings. So let's just presume he spent 70 years of his investing career reading, all sorts of literature, and not just annual filings and SEC filings, but physics and, politics, history. I've calculated that it's around about 2 billion words that Munger has possibly consumed, 2 to 10 billion words in his lifetime, Jet. And then the question is, like, how much does he recall? That's forming his knowledge base. But he's trained himself to, on that content. And I think so there's first of all, there's no denying that the compound knowledge that AI models are going through already, the intelligence that they're building on is growing at a large rate, and it will outperform somebody like Munger or Buffett or whoever. And so I think the opportunity in capital markets when it comes to investing is really interesting, because maybe it levels the playing field. If we have access to these models and they become super intelligent and we just know how to use them in the right way, and they're available publicly, they're not privately run by a hedge fund in New York, maybe that kind of it makes the markets more efficient and makes them probably more fair. If a balance sheet comes out on the stock market and you have something that can read it and understand it because you can't, maybe you know what to do. And so, I think maybe it creates more opportunity for abundance when it comes to investing. That's my view on maybe where it could go for 10 years, and I'm an optimist. I'd like to hope that it won't be held by, concentrated powers on Wall Street. That's my view.
I would love to read 38 hours a week. That sounds. I love reading, and that sounds great. But But the other reflection that I have, and I think is very key to us here at Sharesies, is that it's so much about wealth is personal to you, to your family, your situation, all of these things, and until a technology like AI turns up and is able to take all of that context into account as it provides you with insights and take the information that's been given. Maybe you're a particle physicist. You don't need somebody to give you baby words on the nature of particle physics, but you're trying to evaluate a company that's working in that field and you don't understand the financial terms. It's something that can understand what you know, what you don't, the gaps that you have in your understanding and what's relevant for you. Really changes the picture, in my view, because people can really leverage the opportunities they have personally and solve the problems that they have personally and apply their personal values. Get these tools, and I think we've talked about this several times, the idea that AI at the moment anyway, we're kind of anticipating it acting in a co-pilot role. It's sitting there like a friend, a buddy. It's helping us understand. It's not making decisions for us. It's helping us understand the things that are important to us. And when that happens, it just feels like it's really, really magical and really, really useful.
Yeah. So then if we think about, how different, like what you've seen about maybe different ways that AI is being used in business, what are you seeing as interesting things emerging?
I think if you think about business in general, like as a growth company, as a small business or mid-sized business, like you think about what are your competitive advantages when it comes to competing against, the large, the large, well-known brands, and they have scale and they have their brand and they have maybe pricing power or other things that you can't achieve. So how do you take on a big business that has assets, like big assets, robots or automation or machines? You have to outskill them and you have to outperform. And anyone that's run a small business knows that win on customer service or win on some other operating rhythm in your business. And AI gives you almost a game-changing advantage. You've got this expert available to you at such a low cost. You just need to know how to use it. There's a statistic I read recently. They think by 2030, 6 years, about 40% of the workforce will be AI agents. And that is an AI agent, not saying 40% of people will be out of work. I'm saying that 40% of the workforce will be working with us as agents. I think if you take the top experts at a particular field, let's say marketing, for example, we'll take Seth Godin, one of the most prominent marketers of all time. You load in a few of his books, or you configure your AI to sort of speak to his knowledge. You have that available to you. You have the world's best marketer available to you, and you might be one person selling some stuff online. That's really interesting. I think so. It really, hopefully, in the same way it does with investing, in my view, it could level the playing field, and it gives these smaller businesses this opportunity to thrive if they adopt it. And I think when it comes to adopting AI, second part of my probably answer, Sonya, is I think people just need to know how to prompt, and that's something that I've heard over and over again from the businesses I've spoke to that are trying to adopt AI. First of all, you need to encourage the usage within your business. You need to encourage the sharing of prompts and the experiences you have, and you need to get to know how the AI models think and operate. And you almost, when you interact with these, I personally I'll use Claude, Anthropic's model, for writing tasks, and because I find it's a little more creative. And then I'll switch to GPT for maybe a more rational kind of mathematics or coding tasks or engineering tasks. But each one of them has their subtle kind of differences, the way you interact with it.
Absolutely. I think people need to be building an intuition about these tools and how they work. You can't use them half as effectively. Almost all of our listeners who've heard anything about this stuff will have heard equal amounts of wow, this is amazing, massive hype, and also hallucinations, they lie, they make stuff up, they do all that. And the trick is you get way better outcomes if you invest the time to understand the strengths and weaknesses, spend some time playing with them. It doesn't really matter whether you're doing serious work stuff or whether you're just toying around. Anyway, you're building your own sense, your intuition, the same way that you do with a search engine. We know words that work in search engines, and we know what words don't work in search engines. We got that not because we read a book about it largely, but because we spent time with search engines and we got used to the ones that didn't work.
So one thing I've heard from you guys is people should get stuck in, start playing around with the different tools and just get really familiar. So if you're not already, where should people start with that?
For us here, and not intending to plug this product, but we use this website called POE.com, and it sits across all of the models. Obviously, you can use ChatGPT. There's a number of free models popping up now as well. Even within WhatsApp and Instagram, there's Facebook or Meta's model called Llama available for free for general questions. So there's plenty of ideas and products out there. That's what we do. And I think it really, if you're running a business, you have to think about this now and allow your staff to have access to these tools within the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes a lot of sense for businesses to be investing money to get good quality stuff. If you're someone who searches for stuff a lot, give Perplexity a go. They've taken a dramatically different view of search and could be really, really interesting for you. But definitely, like, it almost doesn't matter the tools, as Luke says, the important thing is getting in there and just having a play, seeing what's interesting and fun. And
have you tried the audio feature within ChatGPT, so you can just have it on in your car and talk to it? That's fascinating. I've done it with my kids. So I pick them up from school. I've got 3 kids, and just I take a moment to explain my kids' ages, their names, and their interests, and then I ask ChatGPT to go around the car one by one and ask them an interesting question that they have to answer. And it becomes a homework task. And I just drive and I let this AI agent take over the conversation in the car, and they love it. It's fascinating.
I love that. It's like your own little family podcast.
Yeah. Well, remember the feeling when we had Encyclopedia Britannica or those, or even a map of the world? I mean, it's the same experience for them, just on a much deeper level.
Yeah, great. So talking about getting stuck in, one thing I think of is like sometimes the problems don't change. It's just the solutions or the ways we might solve those problems become different as different technologies emerge and things like that. And, one thing we are launching soon is, and working with toTelescope to launch that, is the AI search. And one of the problems that exists, and one of the, if people are investing, one of the top questions is, well, what should I invest in, or how should I think about this, and what do I need to know, and want to get more and build their knowledge around investing and build their confidence in that space. So we're launching this in Australia and then soon in New Zealand. But maybe, Richard, do you want to give us a bit of a insight into what AI search is?
Yeah. So AI search for us is, we call the problem discovery. How do you find the thing that you're actually interested in, whether you know it, well or not. And AI search is a new take on this. It's the idea that you can kind of give us a concept. You can search on a concept or an idea. What change in the world might be true? And then how would that impact what you might look to invest in or what you might look to think about?
I think the initial problem we were solving at toTelescope, even prior to working with Sharesies, was that scenario playing, a situation, a theme or an event or something that was personal that mattered to you. And stepping through, I guess, the butterfly effect, if you've heard that term before, but the cause and effect, and then the cause and effect. So going through this process of conducting second, third order thinking, which is an interesting topic, but actually just relying on the 1.7 trillion parameters that OpenAI has in their knowledge base to rationally just search for stocks based on that theme. So not only unpack the idea that you had, but also just to rationally pick the stocks that match the idea. And so I think then it just, what's really interesting about it is that it changes the way you then interact in the real world, because you suddenly realize you have this tool available. So, for example, we had a user go to take their EV to the mechanic, and they said, the tires have a bit of wear on them, but nothing unusual due to it being an EV and having EV wear. And it's like, what do you mean by EV wear? And you put that into Sharesies AI Search, and it actually explains, they get 20 to 25% more wear on their tires because the car's heavier and they have more torque. And so actually, what's an interesting side effect of the electrification of vehicles is that now the tire companies are starting to benefit and their revenue's growing. So that's an interesting idea that you probably wouldn't have traditionally been able to just search. And so I think going into the Sharesies app and just throwing in these ideas throughout the experience you have in your career or at home, and just thinking about the products you use and the services you use in a different way, and being able to search for those. You can put in maybe just something, that an ETF doesn't already cover. Like, what about just female CEOs? Like that, unfortunately, it's not an ETF, it's not an investment product, but perhaps that's just something you want to invest in and or search for, and then choose the single stocks that you actually believe in.
It's so, like, the opportunity, I think, in just helping people build context. Unfortunately, there's not a yes or no answer, to any of the world of investing. But I think what is really fascinating is the more you can kind of understand the richness around your decisions, or the assumptions or the context, and so you can kind of maybe recognise some connections that you hadn't most immediately made. Being able to explore and build that knowledge base, or show some of that logic, or flesh those things out is super exciting. And I think can't wait for this to launch, and also to get feedback from our investors around how this is helping them search and get more interested in building a portfolio that's right for them. I think we've come to the end of our time now, and I think it's just so grateful to have you guys here and sharing your insights, and what's been a really fascinating conversation, and shared some cool tools that people can use to get stuck in. But did just want to say thanks heaps for sharing.
Thank you.